Just like in 1991, the Atlanta Braves can't seem to win a game in the Twin Cities. Hello and welcome to the Twinkie Town Tavern, where the beer is always cold, the Twins talk is always hot, and the stools are always open. I'm your host, Josh Kolojeski, inviting you to grab a drink, pull up a chair, and let's talk about the Twins sweeping the Atlanta Braves. Here's how it happened on Wednesday. We should have learned in 1991 that the Twins don't lose to the Braves at home. Taj Bradley cruises through the first two innings, tossing just 16 pitches combined. A little more trouble for him in the third with runners on first and second and one out, but he gets Acuna to ground out and strikes out Drake Baldwin to end the frame. That's when the Twins strike first. They load the bases with a Victor Caratini walk and hits by Kalen Culpepper and Luke Keeschel. Byron Buxton drives in a run with a fielder's choice before Josh Bell grounds out into a double play to end the inning. Taj strikes out the side in the fourth inning and is cruising until there are two outs in the fifth. That's when he walks Austin Riley and Jim Jarvis before Ronald Acuna singles in a run to tie the game. Culpepper and Keeschel, though, single again in the fifth ahead of a Byron Buxton walk to load the bases. Then Josh Bell this time coaxes a bases-loaded walk of his own. That gives Minnesota the lead. Cody Clemens adds on with a double to give Minnesota a 4-1 lead. Through five, Cody Funderburk struggles. That is through five. And Cody Funderburk struggles for the first time in 2 months in the sixth inning. Lane Thomas drives in one run. Ozzie Albies brings in another. And Mauricio Dubon hits an RBI single off Tommy Nance to tie the game. Nance buckles down from there and strikes out Austin Riley and Jim Jarvis to end the frame. The game remains tied until the seventh. Josh Bell gets a hustle double and comes in to score on a Cody Clemens RBI single. Clemens gets to second on a ground out, and then Brooks Lee brings him in for insurance. Jeff Hoffman and Yoendris Gomez come in to close out the game, with Gomez getting his third save in as many days. Minnesota is in second place in the AL Central at 63-65. The Twins are 4 games behind Chicago for first place in the division, and they hold the final AL wildcard spot right now with the half-game lead over the Texas Rangers. Let's get into it. Let's end the season today. Stop the count. The Minnesota Twins are playoff bound. We definitely would like that, but there's still a long way to go. But as of right now, I think we can feel pretty good about holding on to a playoff spot at this very moment, even with a month and change to play, especially with how deflating the series against the Philadelphia Phillies felt. At that point, it kind of felt like the season was over. We knew logically that it wasn't, but in our guts or in our hearts or wherever it is in your soul or body that you get your deepest feelings, it felt like it was over. But we should have known better, because this Twin season is all about getting our hopes raised and bringing them down and then getting them raised, and it is the Wild Thing roller coaster, essentially, where it just goes around and around and around and goes up and down all throughout. But here we are, the Twins against a team that has a better record than the Philadelphia Phillies, and overall I think is a better roster, are able to sweep that better team than the Philadelphia Phillies after just getting swept by the Phillies. Hard to make sense of, but hey, we will certainly take it. Here at Twinkie Town Tavern, we are a part of the Grey Duck Sports Network. You can give us a follow on Twitter and YouTube. We are at Grey Duck Sports in both of those places. On TikTok, we are at grey.duck.sports. There, you can find podcasts from all of the shows on the Grey Duck Sports Network, as well as shorts and series that we are working on throughout the calendar year. Again, that is at Grey Duck Sports over on Twitter and YouTube, and at grey.duck.sports on TikTok. Big takeaways from this game, and one that I don't want to go unnoticed. I love a good redemption story. When you have failed to do something earlier, Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield version, fails to save his girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, tries to, snaps her neck, thinks about it, dwells on it for years, goes into now a new reality and saves the girlfriend of a different Spider-Man in the same sort of situation because of what he learned from his past. That you can be, that there's a different way to do this. There's a different way. He has replayed that moment in his head millions of times up to this point, and now he gets a chance to redeem himself by, instead of letting a different Peter Parker's girlfriend die, by in fact saving that Peter Parker's girlfriend. And that, in a much less dramatic sense, is what Josh Bell was able to do today. He didn't let anyone's girlfriend die, his own or others, thankfully. But I had an issue in the third inning when Josh Bell came up with the bases loaded and 1 out after a Byron Buxton fielder's choice. Josh Bell grounds into a double play. And it was a slow-moving sort of double play. Like, the ball wasn't grounded very sharply, and I understand that Josh Bell is not the fleetest of foot. But at the same time, I think this was one, if he was running straight out of the box and giving it his all down the line, he is able to extend that inning by getting into first base safely. Another run scores. Butterfly effect from there. The inning is still going on. Who knows what can happen from that point? And I get it, especially for a DH, especially for a veteran DH. I mean, you are not necessarily expecting him to run down the line every single time on a ground ball. And it could have just been a brain fart. I don't think it was a lack of effort thing. But I think he internalized that. I think he did. Because in the 7th inning, with 1 out, Josh Bell comes up, and he's going to be the guy to start a rally. And when you look in the box score and see he hit a double, you're probably thinking a patented Josh Bell double. Off the wall in right center field. Hits the gap. Nope, it's a ground ball through the right side that the center fielder and right fielder had a pretty big gap in front of them, so it did go to the gap, but didn't split those outfielders. The outfielders were able to get it, and 9 times out of 10, usually 10 times out of 10, I'm saying that is probably just going to be a single for Josh Bell, and you'll take that. But Josh Bell, replaying that moment as the designated hitter from the 3rd inning where he didn't show his hustle, decided to redeem himself and did a hustle double into second base. Great. It was excellent. It showed and solidified for me, not that I thought it was an attitude or lack of effort thing in the first place necessarily, but it did show me that this was a player who realized a mistake he made earlier in the game and could fix it right away in the right moment. And then scores from second, doesn't stop the hustle on a single by Cody Clemens, which it wasn't like necessarily hit the best, but if he's at first of all, he's probably only getting up to second base, not going first to third on that. And I wasn't expecting him to score on that play either, as Cody Clemens gets the single to drive him in and put the Twins on top, this time for good, their 3rd lead of the game and their final lead of the game. Josh Bell's hustle, after his lack of hustle earlier in the game, gave us a narrative redemption arc in a microcosmic sort of sense. So hats off to Josh Bell. Thank you not only for obviously getting the clutch hit in the first place. He also walked with the bases loaded, by the way, after his other bases loaded appearance. So that could be also another redemptive moment. But for giving us a nice little narrative string throughout this game, which I think ended up being the ultimate difference. Because at that point in the 7th inning, the game is tied 4-4. The Braves have all of the momentum because they overcame a 4-1 deficit in 1 inning to tie the game in the 6th. And Josh Bell steals the momentum by playing hustle, gritty, grindy baseball. That's got to be something that endears him to the fans. He's kind of this long line of designated hitters that the Twins bring in for 1 year, designated hitters or first baseman, like Ty France last year, Carlos Santana, who had a really good stint back in 2024, Donovan Solano, I suppose, Joey Gallo also, who's not a first base. Well, he did play some first base, but Gary Sanchez back in 2022. So we've had this run of those veteran 1-year players. But man, I like the impact that Josh Bell is having and I love his team-leading attitude as well. But he wasn't the only hero in this game. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the dominant performance of Taj Bradley. Fastball had its run. Splitter was good and had its run as well. Didn't use the curveball too much. Most of his pitches in this game were fastball varieties. Of his 88 pitches, only 7 would you declare as breaking ball or off speed. I guess you could, if you really wanted to get kind of nitpicky, you might say a splitter is more of an off speed pitch than a fastball pitch because it's all grip and deception and dying off of that. I think typically, though, it is charted as a fastball variant. So he only throws 7 breaking balls, and he's throwing high heat. He's getting up to 99 miles per hour consistently throughout the course of this start. Works economically through the first 2 innings, giving up no runs, but also using just 16 pitches to get through 2, setting the Braves down in order, attacking their aggression, which was probably the effect of some frustrations of not being able to score at different points in this game. So whether that was just coincidence or by design in the game plan for Taj Bradley and Victor Caratini, the aggression paid off. 3rd inning, gets a couple of runners on, gets out of that inning. 4th inning, back to work, 1-2-3 inning, strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. There you have it. He is flying through those 4 innings, and into the 5th, he gets the first 2 outs, and he's at like 60-some pitches at this point. 2 outs, nobody on. Austin Riley comes up, and that is when the Braves are able to poke away at him. I'm going to go back to this Austin Riley at bat in just a second. And at the end of 5, he's at 88 pitches. I think I didn't see the same sort of fatigue from Taj Bradley that I think we saw from Dean Kramer against the Phillies, that we saw certainly from Connor Prelip against the Phillies later in those games, where I had said that Derek Shelton absolutely should have brought those guys out of the game at that point, because I thought it was clear as day that they were not in a good position to even finish out the innings that they were in, and that ended up being right because they gave up a ton of runs, gave up a ton of hard contact, missed the strike zone a lot the rest of the way until they were finally removed from the game. Well, late into it. I get, because of that, not wanting to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm not going to say you absolutely should have kept Taj Bradley in past the 5th at 88 pitches. I think I personally would have, but this is not something that I am going to criticize Derek Shelton for doing, because even moments ago or days ago in this show, earlier this week when I was talking about that Phillies series, I was critical for Derek Shelton, and one of the points that I made in that criticism is I would rather have you pull a pitcher too early than pull him too late. And to Derek Shelton's credit, this would fall into pulling Taj Bradley too early. And again, if the other option is, maybe Taj, and we'll never know obviously, but maybe Taj Bradley comes into the game and gives up a ton of hits in the 6th inning, and, Cody Funderburk has the same struggles that he ended up having in this game and only this game for the past 2 months, and then the Braves take a big lead. Maybe that could have happened. I think I'm not going to be totally critical of the process, but I would have made the other decision to keep Taj Bradley into that game. And yet, that point could have been made completely moot if something in that 5th inning had changed. And that is a 2-2 pitch or a 1-2 pitch to Austin Riley with 2 outs in that at-bat. It's a curveball from Bradley that is located in the most excellent of spots if you are trying to hit the corner. And if you zoom in, and the Twins broadcast did, they zoomed in all the way on to the strike box. And the very corner of the strike zone was hitting the very edge of the ball. If there was any space in between, it was that of an atom, and it was called a ball. And I was like, okay, but that looks like a strike. Challenge it. Give it a go. Victor Caratini did not. That would have been the end of the inning. Instead, that's when the Braves start their first rally of this game, get a run, tie the game, and Taj Bradley would have been out of the inning at 68 pitches if Carantini or him, I don't think the Twins pitchers have any leeway to challenge. I think that's kind of an organizational thing because we haven't seen a pitcher from the Twins challenge at all this year. That is where, if Victor Carantini just taps his head, the Twins are out of that inning. Taj Bradley is at 68 pitches, and you're probably having thoughts of him going into the 6th, 7th, maybe even the 8th with the way that he's pitching. I would have liked Victor Carantini to be a little bit more aggressive. And he was aggressive later on in that inning. After Austin Riley gets on base on a 2-2 pitch to the next batter, he taps his head on a pitch that is much more clearly outside of the zone, and the Twins lose that challenge. The call is confirmed. So it's not as if Carantini was going to be hesitant. I just don't think he saw the zone well in that instance, and that is unfortunate because I think we could have gotten a much better gem for Taj Bradley, who probably could have earned the win if he goes into the 6th and 7th, and then you're up 4-1, 6-1 at this point, and you don't even have to use your A or B bullpen. You can go with the C guys. I don't know if Eric Orsi's still on the active roster. You can go with Eric Orsi if you really want. Or you can go with the long reliever that we talked about the other day. Or you can just go with Taylor Rogers. So I didn't necessarily like that non-decision by Victor Carantini to tap his head there, or to not tap his head and then to tap his head on one that was a less obvious. Neither of these were necessarily obvious in any sense, but was less obviously out of the zone, or was more obviously out of the zone, I should say. And then we get a better Taj Bradley performance, but as it stands, still good Taj Bradley performance. Gives up just the 1 run, 7 strikeouts. And we go on from there. Travis Adams was the long reliever I was talking about, that we talked about the other night. Also want to give some more credit, continued credit, to a bullpen that, again, we have been so critical of throughout the course of the year. And obviously it's not that same bullpen, but 3 guys coming in, all who were not on the Twins squad when the season began, and Yoendris Gomez, AJ Minter, Jeff Hoffman. Minter gets the win by throwing 2/3 shutout innings against his old team. And then Hoffman gets a hold, gives up 1 hit, but no runs. And then Yoendris Gomez, for the 3rd day in a row, gets the save. The only runs, I think, given up by the bullpen in the series were by Cody Funderburk, and I think we have a little bit of forgiveness for him because of how dominant he had been, or at least I have more forgiveness for him. I don't know about Twins Twitter and Twins Reddit, but because of how dominant he had been from the start of July 1st. And we talked about it, 0.49 ERA since then. Now, obviously, that ERA has gone up a little bit more, but what can you do? Sometimes you just run into a really good Braves lineup, and that just happened to be the case in this one. So the bullpen, once again, getting its flowers, deservedly so. And I don't know when the last time a Minnesota Twins pitcher got saves in 3 consecutive days. I know that Rocco was very cautious in letting bullpen pitchers go more than 2 days in a row, and often would have Joan Duran unavailable if he had just gotten 2 saves in a row, or Taylor Rogers when he was the closer early on in the Rocco tenure. Derek Shelton goes for it. And now he has the off day, so Yoendris Gomez could get 4 straight saves if the Twins win on Friday in a close one against the Padres. Maybe that's the case because of the off day. And then it just continues to roll for Yoendris Gomez, who now has 20 total saves on the season, and 19 of those have come with the Twins, and in none of those save opportunities has he blown the game. There is just so much confidence that I have whenever Yoendris Gomez enters the game with the lead. It always pays off. And in fact, the numbers say, yes, indeed, it has always paid off this season. Not one single instance of a blown save. A couple more shout-outs to a pair of hitters. Cody Clemens, who is just this weird player when you look at his profile. He just always seems to come through in the biggest of clutch moments. And I think statistically, like, it's been pretty well documented that outside of a few exceptions, there's not really a true like clutch gene in sports. It's mostly related around variance and low sample size. I think David Ortiz would be one of those exceptions. I think Freakonomics, Moneyball have kind of done a little bit of studies on that, although Moneyball's study at this time would be probably about now 23, 25 years old. But still, Cody Clemens is one of the guys that is the exception to that. A big double off the wall that would have been a home run in a lot of ballparks, 9 out of 30, according to Baseball Savant. That would have been a grand slam, and if we were playing elsewhere, would have put the Twins up by a score of 6-1 instead of 4-1. And then, guess what? Taj Bradley still in line for his 10th win of the season, which he certainly deserved, but because of the silly rules and how wins go, it's not going to the pitcher who pitched the best. It's just the pitcher who had the best, was on the mound in the moment that his team took the lead, which A.J. Minter pitched well. So it's not as if he's undeserved, but Taj Bradley was the best pitcher on this mound, bar none, today or yesterday, I guess. We're recording this on Thursday. So Cody Clemens coming up clutch a couple times in the series. It wasn't just with that 2 RBI double, but it was also with the RBI single that gave Minnesota the lead for the last time in the 7th inning. And we already accredited Josh Bell for the hustle to even put them into that position, but Cody Clemens comes through in the clutch. We don't even have to remind you of the ultimate grand slam with 2 outs against the Royals a couple of weeks ago. And then with his glove, makes a diving stop in the 8th or 9th inning of the first game of this series that he's able to get onto his knees, fire out the base runner when the Braves were threatening to tie or take the lead in that game. Clutch moments after clutch moments. Even if the overall numbers, I think the OBP is under 300, which is laughably bad. Slugging is good, so the OPS looks fine. But it seems like when it comes down to it, Cody Clemens is the guy that you trust in the big moment. And I would have never guessed that coming into this last year. He had clutch moments during his time with the Twins after coming over from the Phillies in 2025, but I think those were more fluky to me, and now it just seems to be a part of his overall profile as a player. And I have a lot more confidence in him at the plate, and I guess in the field, because he's been able to make it work there at second base as well. And then I also want to talk about Kalen Culpepper. I thought it was a very astute point that Justin Morneau, or whoever was the color commentator for the Twins broadcast the other day, made on the play of Culpepper, who had 3 hits in this game, his first ever 3-hit game, who is hitting, I think, 290, 300, right around there, has shown that he belongs at the major league level and has probably locked himself into a roster spot through the rest of the season and into next season. Whether that's at shortstop, I think Merrick Houston, if he ever comes up, not this year, but in a future year, maybe next year, I think Merrick Houston would move Kalen Culpepper off of shortstop because Merrick Houston's calling card is his glove, and it just so happens that now it looks like he is a pretty good hitter too. But Kalen Culpepper, earning his stripes, and Justin Morneau, or whoever the color commentator was, said that it was that at-bat against Joan Duran, a long at-bat, at the end of the Phillies-Twins series, even though the Twins lost this game, even though they were down 7-5, it had the runner was already on first, and he's going up against the closer with probably the best stuff, him or Mason Miller, that you're going to see in all in baseball. You're not going to see a more difficult pitcher to hit in the 9th inning than Joan Duran outside of Mason Miller. And he works an at-bat, he's able to stay alive, and he gets a seeing eye single. And it seems to have took off from there for Kalen Culpepper, who I think at that time was hitting like 167, and the batting average continues to rise. And they're not all these hard hits. A lot of them have been seeing eye singles. But he's getting a lot more confidence, and a young player with confidence is almost always a good thing. And that's what the Minnesota Twins have right now in Kalen Culpepper. He's starting to get more play. I think they're starting to use him more every day. Does that put Ryan Kreidler's roster spot in jeopardy if the Twins want to bring up a young prospect? It seems like the Twins don't want to bring up a young prospect because Walker Jenkins, another big game the other day. and because Alex Jackson was the guy that was called up instead of someone else. But if the Twins do need to bring up another prospect or feel like it's the right time for the playoff push, then yeah, Ryan Kreidler's more expendable to option down, or if he's out of options, to waive or to designate for assignment and reassign if he doesn't go claimed. So excited to have that staple in our lineup right now, as long as that continues for Kalen Culpepper. But he is playing very, very well. After he hit a home run in his first game, but after that, kind of a slow start, now really starting to heat it up. And the more that he does that, that is the more confidence that I have that he is not falling into the disastrous low spectrum of the player that he could be projected to be. In a wide range of projections, he is starting to raise the floor of where those projections should start now, in the worst possible moments. So he has come up with a big bat just in time for Twins offense. Again, that is the top in the American League, and now has a playoff spot just a half game ahead of Texas. I think a game ahead of Toronto, game ahead of Detroit, or maybe a half game ahead of Detroit. So it's still not secure. Baltimore had, after the weekend, had a spot in the final AL wildcard spot. Nothing is guaranteed, but if the Twins can stay hot, then they should be able to get things going, especially with that big series, end of August. Get it circled on your calendar, a series of series, 12 straight games that goes White Sox, Tigers, White Sox, Tigers. Each of them with a home series, each of them with an away series. That is going to be the critical factor. And you obviously want to put yourself in as advantageous of a position standings-wise until you get to that point. But those are the games that you will be able to control your most dangerous fellow chasers of the AL Central title and of the final AL wildcard spot. Those are going to be your opportunities. If the Twins sweep, they have probably almost guaranteed themselves a postseason, knock on wood. That'd be a 12-game winning streak at a very optimal time. So I don't see that happening. But if they get a couple of series wins during that, that is something that can change how we feel about the rest of the season and put them in a better pole position for the AL Central and or AL wildcard spot the rest of the way. And adversely, if that doesn't happen, and if they go like 3-9 in this stretch, you might as well write the season as over, no matter what happens against the San Diego Padres in this upcoming weekend series. Let's take a quick look at that series. Game 1 is going to be on Friday. The Twins are off on Thursday, so we will be off on Friday. We won't have a show for you. We will be back on Monday to recap the Twins-Padres series, but it will be Connor Prelip with a 3-6 record, 5.34 ERA, 94 strikeouts, against a to-be-determined pitcher for the San Diego Padres. That game, all these games in San Diego, so late games, get your coffee late in the day so that you have the energy to watch them. First pitch for that is 8:40 p.m. Saturday, Dean Kramer goes for your Twins. He's 2-4, 5.40 ERA, and 53 strikeouts. Against Casey Mize, 5-7, 3.18 ERA, and 95 strikeouts. That game starts at 7:40 p.m. And then on Sunday, Bailey Ober goes for your Twins. So a lot of veterans that, with Kramer and Ober, that you hope have at least the comfortability and not the nerves when they take the mound in these key games. But Bailey Ober, 7-4 with a 4.62 ERA this year, going up against Walker Buehler, 7-6, 4.79 ERA with 104 strikeouts. Buehler was at one time a Cy Young candidate during his years with the Dodgers, so he has that potential. Casey Mize, always good, and then to be determined, complete grab bag. Maybe it's a pitcher that has never pitched in the major leagues before, and the Twins have absolutely no scouting report on. We will see when that game starts tomorrow at 8:40 p.m. Central Time. Should be a good series. If the Twins sweep, they're just getting closer and closer to securing a playoff spot. So let's go, Minnesota Twins. That's going to be the last call for the Twins Talk this evening. Thanks for pulling up a stool and joining the conversation at the Twinkie Town Tavern. We'll see you back here on Monday.